So this is my CCR for my title sequence Reaper Framed. I'm going to take this, frame by frame so that whoever's watching or listening can understand and see certain creative decisions that went into making this and editing and all that jazz. So, yeah. So I'm going to start with the opening frames of the New Cinema logo. The reason why I chose New Cinema was because when I was initially doing research about the different studios that kind of went in, that attributed to certain movies, I wanted one that could both easily produce and distribute my movie. So what I did was that I originally was going to go with Blumhouse Productions, but when I saw that they were mostly horror movies that they produced, and I realized that mine was not a horror movie, I was like, okay, I need to find something else. And so I did a lot of research, and I went through dozens of different production studios like Universal, Warner Brothers, studios like that. And eventually I chose New Line Cinema because they produced and helped distribute different genres of movies. So they don't just stick to a certain type of movie. So that's why I chose New Line Cinema. And I actually in order to actually get this to appear on my my title sequence, I had to look it up on YouTube and then take the link and then convert that into a video, into an MP4 file, so that I could eventually put it into my title sequence and put it in. So what you see here, the font that I'm using, the font is most famous for being associated with the Death Note franchise, not the Netflix series movie. I'm talking about the anime, the manga, stuff like that. And the reason why I chose a Death Note font was because the story of Death Note is very similar to the story that I wanted to tell in Reaper Framed, which I'll get into later on. And that story that I wanted to tell is a lot of, has to do with a lot of the creative decisions that went into the editing process, and of course the shooting and, stuff like that. So the song that's currently playing is called Blood by My Chemical Romance, which is credited in the video. And I wanted to use Blood because the message of the song is basically about this guy who's stuck in a hospital, and he gives he's giving these doctors all this blood because they say that they need it from him, and he's just giving him all this blood, and that's a really dark topic, but it's handled and shown in a very upbeat 1920s music style, the dun dun, yeah, that, and that sort of tone in a song is what I wanted in this video, because what I wanted to do was that I wanted the tone of the song and the tone of the title sequence to sort of set the bar for what one would expect if this was a full-length movie. And the reason why I went with a silent era sort of look with the title sequence was because the song sounds like it comes from an old like silent era movie, at least like an old-timey 1920s silent movie with the, the old-timey music that they had back then. But it also kind of like sets the bar of the tone as well, because the story of a Grim Reaper getting framed for murder, like, that kind of makes it seem as though it's all in black and white, that, oh, it's this killer and this kid is being framed. Like, no, it's actually a more ambiguous story and different motivations, and that actually, that has to do a lot with my purpose in the story. So the costuming, I wanted to keep the story timeline, or like the setting of the film, very modern. I wanted it to be in modern day, because normally when you think of like a Grim Reaper, you think of, an ominous cloak, a skeleton face, like a Reaper scythe? Yeah, scythe. I don't know if I pronounced that correctly or not. But anyways, so I wanted that to be reflected in modern clothing, so I had my friend Ollie, who plays both Grim in the school scenes and the killer in the house scenes, which you'll see in a second. I wanted her to wear her black jacket to kind of signify the normal black cloak of a Grim Reaper that we've all come accustomed to. And one of the things that you'll notice in the changing scenes between the house scenes and the school scenes is that both the Grim Reaper at school and the killer at the house look exactly the same, and that's what I wanted. I wanted them to look exactly the same so that it would set up the whole idea of, oh, is Grim actually the killer, or is that just a fake out? And, like, set up the whole idea of the Grim Reaper getting framed for murder, and looking exactly like Grim to make the framing more plausible. And if you'll see, like, with the direction that I took with Ollie's performance, is that if you look closely, you'll see, like, her hand shaking with the knife. That's because I wanted the killer to appear angry that they lost their victim in the house, and so that's kind of what the killer is doing in the house. The killer is kind of stalking after their victim, and then in the final scene, you'll see what happens. So, what you see here is you see when Grim passes by Brianna, who plays Margot, who eventually ends up becoming the amateur detective who kind of drags Grim along on the case and to the different crime scenes. What you're seeing is that since Grim is a Grim Reaper, and since Grim has passed so closely by this student, Margot, she ends up having a coughing fit and a near-death experience, and that's what I wanted. I wanted to kind of simulate that, oh, he's a Grim Reaper, he's gonna bring death wherever they go. And like, I really hope that translated. It might not have, because that's not an easy thing to pick up on, but when I initially filmed it, Grim looking at it, at the student Margot, that was intentional, because I wanted to kind of set up, like, oh, dang, I caused that, okay, better run before I get caught doing that. And then there's there's a scene of the killer walk down the hall and going up the stairs, but that's actually really important, which, if you'll notice, you have probably noticed by now, The scenes between the school and the house, they are supposed to be similar, and that's because I wanted to set up this idea that these two characters are going to be very similar and very alike, but there's a very key difference that is coming up, which is that Grim is walking down the stairs while the killer is walking up, and that's kind of where the two differ, because Grim, being a fixture of death, is, like, I feel like this is symbolic of him, like, walking down to the underworld, where he takes the souls. And then the killer, who I kind of imagine being like this angel of death killer, where they want to eradicate people they find sinful, which is ironic because in order to achieve a sinless world, the angel of death killer has to commit sin, which is but anyways, so Graham is walking downstairs and symbolically walking down to the underworld, and the angel of death killer is walking up the stairs to this sinless paradise that they want to create. So and then this scene of Grim walking down the hallway, I just wanted to get a hallway shot that parallels the upcoming hallway shot with the killer. So with the shot of the killer walking down the hallway, the reason why that's slow is because it is at this point in the song that the song gets slower, and it's slowly building up to the the killer finally finding the victim, and he raises the knife, and then shing. Yeah. The killer stabs the victim. That was inevitable. But yeah, those two clips are the only clips that are in full. The hallway clip is the only clip that's in full speed, or at least regular speed, because the other clips, they wouldn't quite match with the song if I had kept them at normal pace. So that's why I had to do what I had to do. And then, of course, the Reaper framed last bit. So yeah, and again, like, I wanted to keep all this modern, and I wanted to kind of display the story because I only have a small amount of time to set up my story, and sometimes that's not always what opening title sequences are about, but considering that this is all that I can really do, like this, I want to have a good amount of time to at least show, like, yes, this is what I want, like, this is the story, this is it. So yeah, and then in addition to all of that, I did a lot of research, and a lot of, I found this YouTube channel called Film Riot, which if you read my blog, you'll see that I've talked about it. Film Riot actually had a lot of good tips on the filming part, but my friend Hannah Knight, she actually had a lot of tips about the editing process and how to get songs onto the film, onto the editing software that I was using. So that actually helped a lot, and she helped with, like, editing the song to where I want it to be and, like, fading it out at the end. That was a really cool effect, and I actually owe a lot to her in in the editing aspect, but I also owe a lot to my teacher, Mr. Engel, because he gave me the advice of changing the color of the scenes, because when Grim is on screen, the scene is blue, while when the killer is on screen, the scene is yellow. And that was kind of to distinguish that, okay, these two are completely different characters. That's cool. So thank you for watching this CCR, and I hope you enjoyed my title sequence. Thank you, and goodbye.